just to bring out a couple of broad brush matters. It says the personnel rules make reference in several areas, existing personnel rules, to the Board of Commissioners having administrative control. The county administrator position takes on many of these duties, and most of the changes recommended have to do with changing the Board of Commissioners role to a county administrator role. There are also some new policies having to do with whistleblowing and retaliation. Those can be found on page 74 to 76. We've also updated, revised based on recommendations from attorneys and CIS, or drug and alcohol policy, that's fairly extensively amended or changed, and that's on pages 110 to 123.
So can I just ask a quick question?
Please.
The whistleblower thing, was that kind of state law that we're getting up to date on?
Right. Yes, and I think it's just a good thing to have. I mean, obviously, if somebody's misbehaving, we want to make a pathway available to report that misbehavior to the next person up.
Right.
I'll just use myself example. If I'm doing something wrong, somebody should be able to go to any one of you three commissioners, and whether their complaint is sustained or not have me, AU, take some kind of punitive action against them.
Okay.
These proposed changes, and they're indicated in the red print and the strike-throughs, have been reviewed by County Council. There's also, in addition to the Curry County personnel, which is the fat one, there's also department head and elected official handbook that also has been updated. Fewer changes to this one. Again, focusing, other than some language changes and format changes, focusing primarily again on the role of the county administrator vis-a-vis the department heads, vis-a-vis the elected officials in the county. I would just like to say too, just as and this would be reflecting on Commissioner Huxley's comments at the beginning of our meeting this morning. There's a variety of ways of doing these types of major policy review, and obviously the personnel policies are very important, no question. And I think anybody that's been involved in city or county government for very long will testify that what personnel policies say or what they don't say often becomes a very contested point, either just in the day-to-day processing and procedures of handling personnel issues, but also in many cases ultimately legally, if it's felt that the policies were not followed or that the policies are not current and up to date. So they're very important. But one of the things that I think you as a Board of Commissioners have to decide is the intensity of the review. If the desire on these major policies, or even more minor policies, is to review them very particularly in substantial detail, and that's certainly your right, and I have no objection if the board wants to do that, but that would be one time commitment on the part of yourselves, as far as keeping the minutes and so on, versus what I'm used to. That doesn't mean necessarily it's the right or the best way, but just that's what I've seen mostly of, a more focused review that focuses primarily on the proposed changes, plus maybe other major concerns or questions that the governing board may have. So again,
so I have a question before we proceed. You've been through lots of these types of documents in your past history. Yes. Did this look like it was pretty tight, or?
It was. I actually compared it. I had printed or had emailed to me the personnel review manual from my prior employment with the City of Lebanon, and actually been updated since I retired. And compared it with that, also compared it with some of the materials that CIS had available. And I felt that, yes, I felt it was in very close pattern, format, content to what I was accustomed to. Now,
and Council Huddle reviewed everything.
Council Huddle reviewed it, and we also, Councilor Huddle, you also had another attorney take a kind of a cursory look at things as well. So it has been reviewed, has gone through legal review. And Julie, go ahead. Oh, and CIS, yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
I just want to make sure all the
Absolutely.
I's are dotted and T's crossed.
Absolutely. So, and with that, I would then, for any more particular focus, or either turn it over to Julie, or if you, as commissioners, wanted to.
Well, maybe we should talk about how are we going to approach this.
Okay.
Are we going to look at the changes? Are we going to look at this line by line? What do you think, Commissioner Huxley?
Well, again, I think commissioners just received this late last Friday. Well, that was, and I didn't look at it Friday. I glanced at it over the weekend.
You mean you have other things to do?
So, well, I just glanced at it, but it is very important.
Yes, it is. And that's why I asked the specific
and I
questions.
Approached it that way, certainly because of experience I've been involved in over the last 3 years with policy, with orders, with old orders, with so forth and so on. So I took it to go through it page by page, not just only where I saw red. Okay.
So did you have some particular concerns as you went through it?
I have concerns. I have, just comments throughout the entire thing.
Okay.
Not just if it was red or just because so-and-so reviewed it, it's okay, and suggestions. If nobody wanted, for the commissioners to look at a detail, then we shouldn't even have received it as far as I'm concerned. But I felt it's an important document, and I have a lot of comments.
Well, I do think it's important to look at it in detail, so let's go for it, since we're the only two here and making the decision.
How do we want to?
Let's start at the beginning. How's that?
Do we want?
And maybe Julie could explain as we
do this, or just so we get into the
okay
form of.
Julie Swift, payroll and HR. I think what I would like to see is go through and see what your concerns are and what the issues are different from what we have here, or comments or concerns about.
That's basically what I was saying.
Yeah, instead of me standing here and going through every page and saying this is the change.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, so let's start at the top and voice concerns as we go through.
Okay.
How's that?
Do you have any?
What I did was I went through and looked at the red parts mostly, looking at the changes, and most of them, in my opinion, were looking at the administrator, filling that in. So, but you've had more experience than I have, so.
So do you want me to start? Okay, let's
Yeah,
start with
I'm fine with
let's
that.
start with the intro. And given the memo, that yes, a lot of the changes were because of the county administrator, and I saw that. What I saw though, if you and this was a PDF or an Acrobat document, so you can do searches on it, and you can search for the word administrator just so there's consistency. I saw a lot of inconsistencies if you go between that, what's the personnel officer and what's the county administrator. And clearly on the county administrator job description, which I have here, they are one and the same. Okay, the county administrator is the budget officer, the county administrator is the personnel, the county personnel officer.
Okay, so what you're saying is we need to be consistent through the entire document and make sure that.
Well, you should.
Okay,
You should
I
be
just.
in my, yeah.
So we could go
Okay.
through and make those changes.
But. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I wouldn't be, and I'm sure there are places where that should be changed. I wouldn't want to argue that point. But I would say, and if we go through and look at each one of them, then we'll cover all those bases. But part of what this is for is to give instructions to our employees. So one of the things I think we want to make sure our employees understand is, while I'm ultimately the personnel officer, agreed, Commissioner Huxley is 100% correct there. I think that for routine personnel needs or questions, they are aware that we do have a separate designated column person. Maybe we should change HR assistant, HR manager, HR administrator, whatever term we want to use, so that with detailed type questions, they would normally come to Julie. And also have the option, again, if they had some questions or concerns about me or my behavior, they would have a person to go to share those concerns with.
Mm-hmm.
I spent quite a bit of time also on definitions, because that's where I think where I've always addressed these types of issues on the definitions. And I think, when we get to that, I had quite a few questions, suggestions.
Okay, so what page is that?
Additional definitions. Well, definitions are several pages, but it's Article 3.
Okay.
And I don't mean to jump directly to that, but
okay. Well, let's start.
But because we're, I think what Administrator Hitt brought up is there's a lot of, in my opinion, additions that could be added to the definitions.
Okay.
That would help clear up a lot of these questions, or you can always refer back.
Well, and
to
actually,
definitions.
that's reasonable.
Okay.
So, do you want to dig into the definitions first?
Let me, because that's so close to where we are.
Okay.
Let me just go through, but what we have here, the first on page 4, okay, under the intro, paragraph 2, we say the Office of County Legal Counsel and the Curry County Management Team. The Office of, while the day-to-day decision-making lies with the county administrator, the Curry County Board of Commissioners is charged with the ultimate responsibility and authority. Again, are we going to say, here it's the personnel officer? Are we going to say the county administrator? Are we going to say...
Okay, so bottom line, what you want is consistency throughout the entire document.
That's what I would suggest.
Well, I think that's a reasonable request.
Or demands. This is just suggestions.
No. I think that's reasonable. You need to be
when we go down to quickly, on this page, on 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th paragraph, it says Curry County. Well, then at some point it said Board of Commissioners reserves the right.
To deviate.
Now it's just saying Curry County reserves the right to deviate from this policy. Again, do we want to say the
that needs to be
county
a little
administrator?
That needs to be more specific. I'll agree with you.
The personnel officer. What do we want to do there?
Well, the intent. I remember this discussion, and you two can correct me since you were there part of. If I say anything that's not right, this wording was changed, I think, to make sure, and again, we can specify it in more detail, but that when it says right to deviate from this policy and use discretion in making any employment decision, so that was the ability to, rather than having to go to you guys, well, we want to hire this person, but they don't quite meet this exact qualification or something else, I would have that authority to do that as county administrator.
Well, that's not what this
or
says to me.
Or you as a board would have that authority.
But that's not what this says. This says to me where you're being specific, and I don't have any issue based on what we're talking about, the definitions, and most of these were changed because of the county administrator position.
Right.
But you just explained that you would have the authority to do that.
Right.
Okay. As the county administrator.
So would it be better said, Curry County Administrator reserves the right?
Or board.
Is it the personnel officer again? It's back.
No, it's not the personnel
It's back to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Or do we name everything, forget the personnel officer, and call it the county administrator? But it's a personnel document.
Personnel
Well,
function.
if you look in the definitions, when you talked about definitions, the definition of personnel officer, did you read that on page 12?
I've read, definitely.
So the personnel officer is the position the board has delegated responsibility to assist the county administrator in the administration of the personnel rules and to perform other personnel administration duties as assigned.
If we want, then we should agree on that first, because I had some questions on that definition. But to me, certainly the key is the definitions. If you can't get the definitions right and agree, it's going to be
Then there's a
chaos as you
problem.
try and go through the rest of the document.
So do you want to go to the definitions first?
Well, I
I think County Council?
County Council?
if I could, thank you. So going back to the, I don't want to move off of what we were just talking about, the change from Board of Commissioners to Curry County, because what we did want is to have that allow flexibility. So what is the county? The county. The county.
Exactly.
Well, but the county starts with the Board of Commissioners. All powers of the county are vested in the Board of Commissioners unless they delegate it. So, to me, what that means is then the county means the Board of Commissioners are as delegated.
But if you look at the pyramid
yes.
of authority, we've got the citizens up at the top, and then the Board of Commissioners.
Well, I'm using a different organizational chart here.
Yeah,
as per the ORS. The ORS gives it, yeah.
I
would have a hard time believing the citizens of Curry County are going to make decisions under these personnel rules. I mean, well, that's what we're talking about here.
Probably not. It
okay.
just seems a little ambiguous. So.
Well, right. I see. So what you're saying is, and again, you got to keep it in context, but what we were trying to do here is actually not be specific and allow for Curry County to mean, the organization, the entity, and then in this document, it talks about who does what. And instead of each time saying county administrator has the right to deviate from this policy and use discretion in making employment decisions, or the personnel director, because there is a part in here about the personnel director playing some roles, or even county council. So what instead of saying the Board of Commissioners, we left it up to whoever has their delegated authority. So if you want to clarify that to say any, Curry County designee operating within their authority has the right to, so basically the idea is that we're building in flexibility in the rules, and I agree there's a trade-off between clarity and flexibility, but there are times where you can't. The general rule on legislation is it's very hard to make a rule for every possible future situation and see everything. So that was our staff's goal in using that phrase. But how could we do that without
we've gone back now, and we've now referred to it as the county, and now there's a discussion.
Curry County.
What is Curry County?
Sure.
And if you go to page 5,
yes, sir.
B1B, one question there is define Curry County then. But what is Curry County? You've defined it one time, and you've taken care of it for the balance of the document.
So add a definition of Curry County.
Absolutely.
So add a definition.
Absolutely. My question not is you will. My question is define Curry County in definition, possibly.
Okay.
I think then you've answered that other question where you can always go back to the definitions. What is it?
So when you're looking, you said page 5.
I'm looking page 5, where I marked it on 5B1B.
Which article?
Okay.
Begins 5B. Oh, article. Well, I'm on page 5. Article 1.
Yep.
On page 5.
Yeah, personnel rules are not a
1B.
contract. Yep. And
begins Curry County, and my comment was Curry County. Define Curry County in the definitions.
Good.
Right, because that comes up a number of
Define
times.
it one time, and you can always refer back to it.
Yeah,
You
because
can
I'm just
refer
kind of
somebody
going
else
over
back
this, and
to
it comes up again. So.
on it.
Well, as we're here at the work session, the idea again. So then, for the purpose of these personnel, and this is what work sessions are for, to really hash out ideas and meanings, and we're not taking up a adoption time or a regular meeting to do this.
No.
So the concept of Curry County is, again, it's the legal organization, and in the statutes, all powers are vested in the board unless delegated. And as you know, through the administrator position, we delegated to the administrator. And then these rules are also an example of a delegation. So to me, what is Curry County? Curry County is, a political subdivision of the state of Oregon, a general law county. And then with respect to these rules, it means
the Board of Commissioners, who by law have all powers of the county, or as contained herein or in another, document, delegated representatives of the county with acting within their authority. I mean, I don't know, John Hitt, what do you think we're talking about when we talk about Curry County with respect to these rules?
And that's the key. It is in respect to this document.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah, no question. It's the governing board and their appointed officials to carry out various tasks.
Yeah.
And
Duly
responsibilities.
authorized. And again, so then the question will be, well, who's duly authorized? And I don't think it serves us for purpose of creating this rule to say board order of, January 2nd, authorized. Yep, I agree. And then that'll come on a case-by-case basis. Yeah.
Article of definitions.
All right.
They can always be referred back to and should be the guide for the language that's used throughout the...
Well, so I think Julie's taken notes, so we're going to add a definition of county. It will be along those lines. Mm-hmm. And then whenever we see county in this document, we'll know it may mean the Board of Commissioners or the county administrator.
And if we have a question, we go back to clarify in the definition.
Well, and I'm seeing in a lot of these paragraphs, it starts with Curry County, so that would be a good definition to have there. That makes sense.
Let's go ahead then. Let's jump. We can come back. Let's start and go through the definitions because they're alphabetized.
Okay.
That's Article 5?
Okay. That's Article 3.
Oh, 3, sorry.
Page 10.
On page 10.
Well, it seems like that was the last red mark on page 4.
Correct.
And I can see there are other times between here and there, but so now we're going to page 10.
If you say the last mark, but again, not to jump around, but I had another question, and again, it
are a lot of your
revolved around
questions
the definition.
referring back to definitions that you have questions
A lot
on?
we're referring back for clarification.
Okay.
Yeah. Now
Well,
this
then
one
that's-
on the again on the on page 4 on the intro, but I'm normally going to reference the page number at the bottom. It's easier that way than getting into articles and
good. Yeah, I agree.
But on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down, again, it references the Curry County. We said, okay, if we want to do that, that's fine that way. If you define what that is, okay, down on the last paragraph, on the last sentence, it said representations made by supervisory employees. Okay, that's one, and I have another one with department heads. Definition. What is a supervisory employee?
That's defined in state law, actually.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Which is fine if we have, but
we would want to make sure that's what we're talking about.
Who is a you're saying representations made by, that are contrary to.
Yeah, although this is a negative. So what this is trying to avoid is somebody that's like a crew chief in the road department saying, oh yeah, you can do X or
I
you
agree,
can do
because
Y.
my next comment was wide limit. After you define what a supervisory employee is, because it's
so we
stated.
want to take away that claim. Well, my supervisor said,
okay,
I
then my
didn't need to
question is
follow this.
why limit based on this? All of a sudden, somebody else says, well, I wasn't in there, I can do whatever I want.
Restrictions made by, but that's anyone. So Julie's in a supervisor position. I am. John Huddle is. I mean, there's anybody that's in any authority over any employee is in a supervisory
But are we
position.
limiting? You're limiting to supervisor. Now that you start to define it,
Right.
You've limited it.
Right.
So you think that needs to be another definition in there?
Oh, I think so. But my question goes further: is why limit? And is everybody else fair game to say whatever they want?
Well,
So
we could add that. I've never heard of a fellow coworker, again, we're using the road department, saying, oh yeah, Joe, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter what it says in here. You can do whatever you want. I mean, sometimes, and then that employee figure, oh, my coworker says it's fine, so it's fine, without even checking with his or her supervisor. Now, I mean, again, I don't have a problem adding what a supervisor in his definition if we don't, and I guess we don't.
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, Julie, go ahead. Oh, we do have it here.
On page 6,
We do
there's
have
a
it.
definition of supervisor, which I have moved to the definitions.
Okay.
So it's moved from page 6 into the definitions under supervisor.
Yeah, number 27. It's page 12 on my version.
Yes.
Well, thank you. So I actually.
I'm out of it.
That's okay. I like the second. So Tom Huxley's making 2 points. He's saying, Commissioner Huxley's saying, one, what is a supervisor, but why are we limiting it? Because what he's more or less echoing is we remove the limitation of Board of Commissioners to allow flexibility in Curry County. This statement could be made almost in the abstract and saying representations, without saying by whom at all, that are contrary to any of the following policies shall not be binding on Curry County. So why limit it to supervisory employees? Why say who they're made by? Just say representations that are contrary to any of the following policies shall be binding on the county. That puts us in a more flexibility that would apply in different situations. It could be circumstantial.
Correct.
So
Okay.
Hence, that's my question,
yeah.
why
Is that
limit?
off?
is that, and that, I think as legal counsel, I like it to be flexible, to apply to multiple situations. And, you know, I'm nearly positive it says in here as well. Yeah.
And it may
again,
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's.
You didn't get through it all. That's the
I
problem.
didn't. I only got 35. But my comment at the bottom again, and this is after you get to that point where Adobe is so marvelous a tool. You go through on a search by word, and it'll pick up where you have others or where you have differences that you pick up,
Okay,
where
so
you
we'll
don't.
remove that segment that just says made by supervisory employees.
Okay. If we go to rather than, okay, now we're in.
So what page are we on now?
I like going page by page so that we don't flip back and forth.
Okay, and then when we get to the definitions, we get to the definitions.
that's okay.
then-
That might
okay.
be easier.
Um,
Okay, so what page?
On page 5,
Okay, gotcha.
on the, I had a question mark on the first paragraph, all in caps. These rules, and I wasn't sure because I didn't have the other document to see whether, because this was underlined, was it an addition to?
No,
but-
it's current language.
Okay.
Current language here.
It says, these rules set forth the policies and procedures to be followed by the county in the administration of its personnel program. Okay, so it's the county's personnel. Is that what the
Yes.
Yep,
meaning was?
yep,
Okay.
yep.
Okay, down on, wait, we already talked about
Who is the
B1B,
county?
Curry County, define Curry County. And a lot of times also, and it is defined here, and I'm not trying to do it overboard with definitions, but a lot of documents have a lot of definitions to begin with to save a lot of grief later. As used in the manual, the words shall or will. Okay, so you're defining right there. Okay, I would at least suggest considering also definition for those words because they're so critical.
Yeah, they're pretty
throughout
powerful.
a
It says right
policy.
there it should be interpreted
As
as mandatory.
mandatory.
Yeah, and there's a.
What would you add to that?
Oh no, I'm just saying I
Put
would
it in the
put it. I would put
definitions
it
is
in
what
the
you're saying.
definitions. I think it's good there,
Oh,
Right.
but it's not
Okay.
in the definitions. And if ever there's the word shall versus will or may, in legal documents,
So
I
just-
believe shall's got the most clout.
So copy it from the
Historically, yep.
definitions.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you get it alphabetized so it's easy to find.
Right. Well, historically, it meant actually something different than will, but that's kind of been lost.
On page 6,
So you want to leave it there also, but addition, put it in the definitions.
Definition page, yeah.
Okay.
on page 6, there was a cross out at the top. It was C. I think
That's because
it
I've
meant
moved it.
page 12. I said C page 12. So where did I find that?
Definition.
Yeah, it was
Definitions.
on,
Page 10, I think.
okay, that's where it was. It was on number 27. It had been put in there. Okay. If that's an acceptable, and again, I wasn't trying to make these determinations what the actual definition should be. Certainly it should be there. If that's an acceptable definition, then fine.
You just want it more clear by putting things in the definitions so that people
and
can.
so long as it makes sense.
Right.
Is this seem like a reasonable, succinct definition?
So are the definitions usually put first in most of these documents?
Typically, yeah.
Okay, just curious.
We could change
At
it.
least what I've seen,
Yeah.
or certainly up on the front end, maybe not after
I
an
think
intro. or
the
something.
introduction should be first.
Intro
Well,
and then
after-
maybe
after the
definitions
intro, yeah.
after that.
Yeah, after the
But-
So you don't think
Typically.
intro and then statement and then,
Yeah.
yeah, I can move whatever around, however you want it.
Okay.
So do
And-
you want the definitions then before the equal opportunity and non-discrimination? Or do you want it before the statement and purpose?
I think statement and purpose first before
And then
definitions.
Did the
And then
definitions
definitions
should
after
follow
that.
that anyway? Yeah, they were
Definitions would be Article 3 and Article 2 would become
Yeah.
definitions would become Article 2. Equal opportunity statement will become Article
Article
3, so
3,
flip-flop those.
Sure.
Yeah, that works.
On, what were we, page 6? Yeah,
Mhm.
page 7.
Now you're page 7, okay.
Just on the second paragraph, the last few words in the second paragraph. Yes, it's an employee manual, but we're saying there, the county is not bound by any oral promises concerning the length or terms of your employment. It can't just be employees because you have officials. Are officials covered in this at all or not?
No. Elected officials are not covered in the,
Elected, but do we have any other officials or department
department heads are covered into this, yeah.
Okay, even though there's a separate policy
Mm-hmm.
for department heads.
Right.
So are they all, is this just employees only are covered? Is that,
Which one are you on?
Everyone except elected officials.
Yes, that's how I would.
okay, but we're referring to your employment.
Whoever
Versus-
reads this.
Pardon me?
That's for the reader.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there was just a couple of word changes on page 8 under C2. On the whistleblower. On page 9. On D, the paragraph under D, before D1, but just D. It says typically concerns, about midway down through that paragraph, typically concerns should be shared with a supervisor, department head, county administrator, legal counsel, or the personnel officer. My question is it their direct supervisor, which I wouldn't think would be good. Do you really want that many different individual titles in there or individual people that a person who's concerned or has concerns, if everything's legit, some pretty serious concerns, or is it that should they go to the personnel officer first?
Well, I think this is kind of standard wording, or at least close to it, and I think the rationale behind that is to encourage employees to go to somebody that's in a role of authority, but whomever they feel most comfortable with.
Maybe if you add
Yes.
something to that effect, then.
Right.
back
And
to
we
where
certainly
you-
could.
you-
We certainly could.
To whom we give you this.
Because if the
with-
complaint's about their immediate supervisor, then
Yeah, no, I would
Well,
say
yeah.
Hard to
you
go there.
certainly-
Right.
Yeah.
So, and probably the one thing we should add too, if we haven't added it someplace else, is language that I've typically seen that if whomever you go to fails to respond appropriately, then they should understand they have the right to go to the next, yeah.
Yeah, you should have a
You've
chain of
given them
authority in
here
there.
For a right to pretty much go to anybody.
Right,
Right here.
right, yeah. So we should add that.
Okay. And
So, where do we want to put?
I would, Julie, you and I can work on that. I would just put it right after that sentence that Commissioner Huxley just read.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll work on that
Yeah.
together.
just put that. On paragraph D2, when it starts discrimination or retaliation about, and halfway down, and my question came from the paragraph under D, the whistleblower. I'm saying why duplicate, but some of the red text here, again, an employee who believes has been subjected to discrimination, etc., or for whistleblowing, should immediately contact, it's saying again, the county administrator. The personnel officer here has been crossed out. Not sure.
Okay, so if I can explain a little bit of that. Paragraph 2 is there's whistleblowing, and then paragraph 2 is the protection for the whistleblower, that there won't be any discrimination or retaliation against that person for whistleblowing. So the reason we cross out personnel officer further down in the paragraph is because depending on who receives the complaint
concern, yeah.
and or the concern is the one that'll do it. So
It
if
used
it
to
doesn't
only
have
be
to
the
come,
person. It used to
right.
only be the
Right.
personnel
Yeah,
officer
right.
who you go to. So then, the immediate following said the personnel officer or designee, shall conduct. And then, because we added,
supervisor,
the
department head.
people you could go to in addition to the personnel officer, we had to get rid of the personnel officer or designee, and then it just says the county official, receiving the report or complaint. So.
Well, but you're supposed to contact with questions on discrimination or retaliation. The affected person is to should immediately contact the county administrator. I'm going to read this out of sequence, or the personnel officer, or county legal counsel. Period. So you're going to contact any of
us
them.
three. Yep, any of us three.
Then a county official. Now, so we didn't even reference a county official by definition or term above, but now a county official.
Well, the
shall
county
conduct,
county
or,
official.
or
The
the
county-
county official.
receiving the
Receiving
report.
or complaint.
So that could only be, or
Now,
probably.
so is the county shall conduct an investigation? Who's qualified to conduct it? All those different people to conduct an investigation?
Well, we have to do investigations.
Right.
For really any
Oh,
kind
no,
of
I
serious
understand,
complaint.
but who would be the?
Well,
Well, it would
that
be one
doesn't
of
mean
us
they
three.
personally conduct the investigation. That means they're responsible for making sure investigation happens.
Okay,
So
then-
if it came to
then-
me, I would refer to Julie. Julie, would you conduct this investigation? Came to Julie, she might ask Councilor Huddle to conduct the investigation. Or in a very serious matter, particularly more complicated matter, we might ask for outside help, outside investigator.
So, but it says that person shall conduct.
Well, I don't take
Shall is
that
mandatory.
real literally, but.
Pretty mandatory to me.
No, we've already said it is earlier.
Okay.
Well, we
But
could
now
say,
it's-
we could say shall be responsible for
Well,
conducting.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, we can say that. That would be more clear.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's the intent, will be responsible for conducting.
Or shall
Or
be.
shall be responsible for making sure it happens.
Right. Be
Correct.
responsible.
If you're going to
Not-
delegate,
But you're not going to say that.
responsible for the investigation, not necessarily for conducting the
Yeah,
investigation.
no, not to conduct, yes, that's correct.
Shall be
Okay.
responsible for. Shall.
Because clearly when it said the county official, okay, well, that could end up, well, you're saying the county administrator is an official, the county legal counsel an official, and the personnel officer is an official. So they, okay.
Mhm.
I have a question for just the team as far as John Hitt and Julie Swift. Up above, subsection D, whistleblower, it says typically concerns should be shared with, you know, so, and it says supervisor, department head, administrator, counsel, personnel officer. So that's who you share your concerns with. And then in number 2, we say an employee who believes that they've been subjected to discrimination shall immediately contact, and we don't use supervisor or department head there. And again, it's entirely possible those would be the individuals who would be engaging in the discriminatory conduct in the typical scenario. Sometimes it's a coworker. But is there a reason in number 2 that we left out supervisor or department head? Because if I'm not mistaken, don't we direct all the department heads and supervisors to confer with us on any report they get?
I think they're 2 different pieces.
Good. Okay, that's what I wanted to. I just
first,
like clarity of why we're having supervisor and department head in the top and not in the bottom.
Because I think the top is for, the top is for whistleblowing. If you have a concern, you think something's going wrong, something's not right, and you're going to blow the whistle on somebody, go to your supervisor, go to your department head. Number 2 talks about discrimination or retaliation if you have blown the whistle on someone.
Okay.
So that's a little more serious offense. I think that's why it probably goes higher up the food chain.
All right. That's fair. As long as I was just wondering in my mind what the reason was for the difference in the 2. And so one is, hey, I'm going to report a problem. And then all of a sudden you're denied leave requests, or you get reassigned to, the Russian front or whatever it is, and then you report.
Oh, is that an option? We can do that?
No, I think it's, anyway.
Kind of mess up our travel policy.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
strain on the travel budget.
I'm sorry to use that as an example, but anyway, so I understand the personnel officer's explanation. It does make sense. Does the board have questions why there's differences of who you would report a simple, hey, I think there's a violation, versus, oh, now I'm being punished for the violation, for reporting it. So we take it to 2 different people because they're technically 2 different things. Okay. And and the county official just means those 3 above.
So now you defined a county official.
Yeah, maybe we could, that's, we could take that out and say, just repeat it again. The administrator, counsel, or personnel officer shall, receiving the report, shall conduct an investigation. The one issue about the county administrator conducting an investigation, yeah, that's okay. This is a different this is a whistleblowing investigation, so, or discrimination on whistleblowing.
Yeah, retaliation.
Yeah, I don't know that it's possible that the county administrator, my usual advice is that the person who would ultimately make the decision not do the investigation.
Yeah, true.
So let's say, for instance, we had a whistleblower. Someone said, hey, somebody's spending money, or somebody's, using a backhoe to landscape their lawn or something like that. Just there's some violation of a law done by a county employee or official or what have you. They report it to supervisor, such and such, department head, county administrator, and again, the next thing you know, they feel they're being discriminated against, etc. And then they report that discrimination. If they report it to the county administrator and they say, hey, my supervisor is discriminating against me because I did whistleblowing on him, ultimately the county administrator may be the person who has to discipline that supervisor. So the county administrator in that circumstance, even though they were reported to, should not be doing the investigation of, they would usually, again, as he would direct it, and typically the people who do these investigations are personnel officer, myself. Sometimes we will confer with outside counsel or an insurance company.
But by definition, the personnel officer is the county administrator.
Well, I think we are going to get to that in just a moment.
Okay.
But
I
I would say virtually never that position, county administrator would do an investigation. I think in my entire career, I did one, and that was a complaint about an HR officer. And
okay.
Yeah.
But usually a county administrator is going to be the decision maker, and
Yep.
The idea is you present the investigation results to the
Correct.
decision maker. But again, when you say the personnel officer is the county administrator, I think we are going to get to that because we're getting close.
Getting close.
Okay.
So do we want to work on the
Excuse me.
wording on that on county officials, so we don't have to, so maybe somehow say the receiving party of the complaint?
Or we could say the party or the individual,
recipient- the
or
recipient of the
recipient of the complaint, or report a complaint.
To take
Yeah.
out county official.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which gives you a little bit more flexibility than just naming
Yeah.
2 or 3 positions.
Yeah.
On the second, still on page 9, on the second to the last paragraph, beginning with anyone desiring additional information. Okay, it's saying, please call the Curry County personnel officer, but basically it's still the same personnel officer.
Yeah, and again,
Is there any
Julie,
need to put Curry County in there? Just contact the personnel officer? Throughout
Maybe
this
that-
thus far, we've used the personnel officer, I think,
Sure,
throughout.
take it out.
And is this address down here where we want to, I guess you're giving them a phone number or by mail, this is where it would go then,
Yes.
that to the finance department, to that suite number.
Yes.
You might want to say attention personnel officer so that
Yep.
it doesn't, just get opened by anybody.
Got it.
So moving on to
Okay.
definitions.
Article 3 definitions. Okay.
Which will be Article.
We had, when I got down to number 4, the appointing authority means, and it's saying department heads and elected officials. So we get back to department heads. Are we going to define what department heads are? Because I did not
yeah, that's not there.
see that in here.
I could certainly do that.
Or department head, singular. And I also did not see elected officials. Now to carry on with that, or continue with the number 4, the definition. Okay, we're saying appointing authority means department heads and elected officials with the ability, is it ability or authority, okay, to make personnel recommendations to the county administrator. So again, are we making them personnel recommendations typically when it's one and the same, but do we want to use in this case, the phrase county administrator, or do we want to use to make those to the personnel officer?
To the county administrator.
Yeah, those go to me.
Okay.
Julie? So on page 5, going backwards, Article 1, sub B, sub 2, we call them department directors. And so I think we should just be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And
Good
so-
Okay.
good catch
So-
for, yep.
Department heads.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I guess we call them department heads, and then,
Yeah, in our other book, they're called department heads.
So you're saying change directors to heads for consistency?
I think so. I mean, I think that's what it means.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then,
Yep. Now, did we, while you're, I'm sorry.
could I ask another one, going back up again? I'm now on page 8.
Page 8?
Yep. And this is under religious accommodation. We talk about number 2, C2. It says, depending on the type of conflict and suggested accommodation, the supervisor should confer with his or her manager and the personnel officer.
Okay.
So do we know,
Department
does
head.
the manager mean department head? And, you know, do we want to define department head to, you know, as, I mean, essentially they are the folks appointed. We only have a handful, I think, in the county. It might make sense to list each department that has a department head.
Quite a few.
I wouldn't, only because
Okay.
things change so often.
All right, good
I was
enough.
going to say, it could change.
Yep.
I think
All right.
that'll be something in the organizational chart probably.
Okay, so we'll have to come up with a definition of what a department head is or who is a department
So
head.
the supervisor should confer with his or her department head. Okay.
Is it ever going to be the case where the supervisor is the department head?
Potentially.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
that most of the time with, because we don't have a lot of layers in our,
Any.
Yeah, there are
Many times
some
it would
department
be-
heads that are
yeah.
one-person departments.
okay. Because I feel like I'm both a supervisor and a department head.
That's because, no, never mind.
All right,
Well, so
Thank
for
you.
instance, in the assessor's office, we have Tracy, who's a
Go in there.
supervisor,
yeah,
and Jim is the department head,
Correct.
also an elected official. So
Yep.
there is a layer there.
sure, or even in the road department, you know, they probably have even,
They have foreman and.
yep, they have a bunch of different layers of chain of command there.
Yep.
Okay. I wonder, and I think if I'm not mistaken, do we have a organizational chart as an exhibit to this document?
One is supposed to be attached. I have not done so because our organizational chart is in the process of being revamped and probably is not really going to be done until our budget, next year's budget is adopted or at least close to it.
And I think the organizational chart that we were talking about goes to the department head manual, and then we also put it in the budget document.
Right.
So,
So anyway, that
Be
needs
updated.
substantial, well, substantial is probably too strong of a word, but definite revision.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
which I haven't gotten to yet, so,
it just makes sense that
yeah.
these definitions could be put in appropriate places on that exhibit, that document.
We could.
Sorry about the
Oh,
digression.
no.
Okay.
It's
Okay, back to definitions.
on your, on 10, so we're still, okay, page 10, okay, to the county administrator. And then we said department head definitions, we've talked about that.
okay, so right now we need to come up with a Curry County definition, a department head definition, and an elected official definition.
That's what I have, yes.
Correct. Page 11, which starts on number 11, page 2 of the Article 3 definitions. Is there, this starts with 11 as domestic partner. Is there a prevailing definition today as far as what a domestic partner is?
I believe that's it.
There's a definition in state law, yeah.
Is
I don't know if this is exactly,
it?
I
Yeah,
don't know.
I don't
There
know.
is a
I
definition in
might-
state law, though.
I would say, just suggest to verify and see what it is, because I think it changed. It's a different world, but it's changing.
It's true.
You know, you might as well get the most accurate interpretation. Okay. And then on the flex schedule, I had circled appointing authority, but we just addressed that. On 16, which is a regular employee, and we do have, when we get into the master payroll, there are quite a few that are categorized or as a regular.
That's correct.
What it describes here as an employee who works for the county on an as needed basis with no guaranteed hours or schedule. these physicians are not eligible for benefits except PERS if qualifications are met. And there are different thresholds for PERS.
Right.
Are there, for a regular employee, are there also hourly thresholds?
Yes, that's our Teamsters issue. We have to keep them below 80 hours a month to not get into the insurance issues.
With our current insurance carrier, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But is that a threshold that applies to any employee, whether
Yes.
they're a member? So the Teamsters are running the show as far as that definition, then, if you will.
Well,
Not
to that
state
extent,
law, not
yeah, to that extent, you're correct. Yes.
because that was going to be my next question. Are there definitions, state law?
Well, there's
Regular,
a definition in state law of an hourly paid or compensated employee and a non-hourly compensated employee. I think all of these
I
are.
know this has come up, the irregular and the number of hours, and I think the PERS thresholds also. And typically, you don't remember what they were. You get back, I've gotten back to Julie on multiple occasions with the same question. Is this an area that you would want to put something like that in, or just
Maybe have
those-
some
those-
kind of an addendum or
Not go
something?
there.
Well, those hourly requirements as far as Teamsters goes is part of the subscription agreement with Teamsters.
As far as health insurance, he's
Right.
talking about PERS.
well, or I'm
Versus
just talking
state
about
law.
the policy here, this manual. Is there something that you want to add? Because we've had departments with what I would term irregular employees that have gone over and learned the hard way.
So do
Not
you
because
want,
they
We could
they
define-
intended to, but
you
Yeah.
probably want to be more specific here. Do they change?
In a while.
No.
Okay.
But they've been, as I say, very, one that I can recall after I was here was a very expensive lesson, very expensive. Okay.
PERS designated, okay.
Some of these names were here, but this is on number 18 on page 11. Definitions. It says out-of-state travel, I'm assuming by anyone, but I don't know, to or through a state other than Oregon, but excluding travel through Del Norte County, California to arrive at a destination in Oregon, travel to Del Norte and Humboldt counties, California, and travel to Clark County, Washington, by county employees. So that's county employees. So that's I think that's further defined than what when I said by anyone in connection with county business. What's with all the different?
Well, I think as far as through Del Norte County, I mean, if someone say is going to Idaho or Utah or somewhere, and they got when
Have
they
to go
try
to
199, you go into California and back into Oregon, and then
Okay.
out. So I think that one
Oh,
makes sense
okay,
to me.
okay.
Well, I just
Honestly, I
think
don't
this
know
is
why the Del Norte and Humboldt.
these are excluding these areas from being considered as out.
So
Okay, so that's the thought process.
traveling to Crescent City isn't considered out-of-state travel.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. That makes sense.
Okay. And what about Humboldt?
Eureka
Yeah, so Eureka would be in the same boat, wouldn't be classified as out-of-state travel.
is out-of-state.
Yeah. Or Vancouver, Washington, or Camas, Washington, or those. long
And so you
duration.
put those in because we have employees going to those places.
Potentially for trainings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, then, and not for this, but, you know, this is going to, does this affect the travel policy?
Well, there's later in the travel policy, there is specific rules for out of state
For out of
versus
state,
in
yeah,
state.
right.
Well, yeah, but I meant, when I said a travel, we had one for the elected
That's
officials.
Yeah,
elected
no,
officials.
this would
Totally
not impact
separate.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so.
And again, elected officials are not encompassed in this just
Okay.
generically. And we'll make that more clear.
Okay.
When we define
And it's-
elected official.
But it's by county employees, which
Right.
eliminates elected officials.
Correct.
Okay, okay. And have we defined an employee?
Yes.
Where did
Number
we do that?
13.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Page 11,
13.
number 13.
Number 13
Okay,
is employee.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And part-time position. Part-time position means any position or appointment of a minimum 0.5 FTE that has regular daily, weekly, or regular daily, comma, weekly or monthly hours less than the hours of work established by the board. Whew.
I think that falls in with the SEIU contract.
Yeah,
That's SEI.
A road department employee who's at least
This
or
is
someone who
more
falls into the
to
union.
follow the SEIU agreement, or no?
No.
Okay.
No. SEIU has their own agreement as far as qualifications. So these are non-represented employees, which the only large group we have of that is the road department.
right.
Okay. So, okay. Okay. And on then page 12, which starts with 20, personnel officer.
I thought we talked
Okay.
about that before.
Yeah, so do we need to do any rewording on this? We're saying, is the position the board has delegated responsibility to assist the county administrator?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's okay with that
Yeah.
language?
Mhm.
Is there anything, oh, that's what I did here, to do with probate? I'm looking at position number 23, promotion number 24. Is there anything with probation or probationary for a definition?
No, because as an at-will employee, they're kind of like on never-ending double secret probation. If we put a
Yeah, we had a
probationary
discussion
period,
about this,
yeah,
actually,
if we
yeah.
put a probationary period in, then that kind of takes away the at-will status of the employee. And we start off at the beginning saying that Curry County is an at-will employer. So we took that out when we revised these back in 2013 at the recommendation of CIS.
Now, did that apply more to department heads Because I know that was a change in the department.
It's
policy,
any
or
non-represented employee, so that would include the road department.
So there are no probationary periods anymore.
Not for non-represented employees,
Only for the two union,
only for the union employees.
and that's in their contract.
Okay. Page 2. It's 26. It's Salary Evaluation Committee. What did I say? See page 10.6. Why is it page 10?
It might be rule 10.
10. This is not the committee.
That's the same as the compensation committee.
Yeah, this
No,
is
it's
not
an ad hoc.
the
No.
salary compensation or the compensation
No.
committee. This is, okay.
Completely separate.
Is this something that is mandatory?
No.
Okay, is this something that, I know you, from time to time, touch base with, is it LGPI or?
Yes,
Okay.
LGPI.
And I know at times, for whatever, reasons, availability of people, on and on and on, it doesn't happen.
Correct.
So is this something that needs to, does the county need, with the administrator and the system now, do they really need a salary and evaluation committee? That's the question that I have.
Well, it is appointed and meets at my direction. So generally speaking, you're correct, we don't need it. It would only be under rather unusual, like a new position being created, where there was
Well,
some.
We did that, and we didn't need the committee. We created the county administrator position. We created the interim administrator position without any of that.
Yeah,
So
no,
do
you
we-
can't.
do we-
You can't. And I could. But just there may be a situation where I would want to say, I'm not really sure what's a fair compensation for
So
this
would
position.
would you feel comfortable contacting LGPI?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Well,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
can I give
And
you a little
normally
bit of
that's what we
background?
do.
Yeah, what the genesis of the committee was back in 2001 when we had LGPI do a countywide salary study, and it was
Right.
both to it was both an internal study to align positions in like created with the assistance of department heads, 2 non-represented non-department heads, 2 members of SEIU, and 2 members of Teamsters for this whole thing. And so once the results all came out, Teamsters decided not to buy into the salary study, so the Teamsters employees went off of the committee. But the rest of it remained intact, and we were meeting about once a month because at that time we had home health, because we wanted to keep it objective. We wanted to have a group that what we did was there's 11 factors, and so you put a point value on each of the factors. We would take that string, send it to LGPI. LGPI says, hey, that falls into salary range 9. We don't have the matrix here. We don't know what numbers make up what. So it was a way to get positions into salary ranges, taking out the people and the commissioners at the time that said, hey, I really like Susie Q, so I'm going to put her to range 10, when the position maybe only belonged to range 8. So this whole process was created in 2002, and we kept that committee intact. As the county has shrunk, the committee is not made up of so many people anymore. My position is static on the committee. We have one department head, one non-represented, one non-department head, and one SEIU member. Because a while, and so any job descriptions that come through, I've just sent them directly to LGPI. Now, that being said, LGPI does charge for this service to put them in the work on our end. It was less. They would look at our evaluation string, go, yeah, I think that's pretty good. That falls in a range, whatever. If they said, well, why is this, and maybe we should talk. So I think it has its place. We don't have the staffing to really do it right now, but I think it's probably a good thing to keep in the rules and just keep it as a placeholder in case someday it does become an important tool. But I think the use of having an outside firm place the salary range is important.
So what you do is you give the LBG, whatever they're called, a description, a job description,
Yes.
and then they put them in a salary range.
Yes, what they do and what we did as a committee, we had the job description. We place a point factor on each of the factors, a point value on each of the factors, and then we would send our result for them to tell us where it falls in the what salary range it falls into.
So how much does it cost to do that?
I think they charge $110 an hour. So if I send just a bare job description, most of them have been coming back at like $77 to do that. But in the past, when we would send our evaluation string and they don't have to spend so much time, it was maybe half that.
And we had 6 people or 8 people that cost a lot more than $100 and whatever dollars.
That's okay. And when you're done, that's all. I was just waiting.
That was 18 years ago. We don't do it. I would suggest, we can't make a decision here, I understand, but I would say mark it off.
I've been through this, and I've had my own questions about the salary evaluation committee. I was wondering if there was a board order, appointing them like a lot of other boards and committees, and because it does come into play later on. At least we have made some changes to address it, but when we get to Article 9 on page 23, the compensation plan, the salary evaluation committee played a fairly prominent role in that process, and that's where, again, I said, who are they? Do we have a record of a board order appointing them? And really, it seemed like it had kind of vacancies, and then it just, Julie Swift here explained that it's down to 3, but I was always looking at, and their terms expire, who's going to be reappointed, who does the appointment, and I think, you could leave it up to the county administrator to present his own compensation plan that he comes up with at his resources available. But I don't think it's a requirement.
Committee, and that's one of them. There's been no consistency.
Right.
Is there a written policy procedure?
If you look at Article 7,
yeah.
we did a significant, at least in the reclassification allocation, we took out a lot of references to salary evaluation committee, but we still have it there. I don't know that it changes things. I think it would be a good where you talk about concepts and ideas and values and benefits and advantages, disadvantages, to having it in our rules and having it be a will and a mandatory and a required. And then we earlier talked about giving us flexibility. Do we want to be locked into using a salary evaluation committee, or do we want to allow the county administrator to have whatever tools are available? The idea of these rules is that they prevent a just and equitable compensation packet and those kind of things. And yes, a salary evaluation committee could be one way of doing it. Who's on it? Labor, management representatives, etc. professionals in the field. But again, so I think just you've heard from Julie Swift the historical basis of it, which, the history of this county is that things we used to do we're just not able to do
But
anymore.
started from ground zero pretty much as far as,
And then, it started in a few years with a survey. And John,
clearly,
did you have a salary evaluation committee where you came from? Or how
yes, we did. And I'm going to look at it.
this stuff?
Well, I think
but clearly it hasn't been a requirement.
no,
because we've
it's definitely
not paid any.
Yeah, definitely not a requirement, nor do I think it should be a requirement. And maybe we want to add a mayor, one or two mays in here to further M-A-Y, like the
Permissive.
recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. So I just think it should be left and left to the judgment of a future county administrator. I would guess that the vast majority of the time, a future county administrator like myself would not employ this, but there might be, again, special circumstances where they might want to, and I think leaving it here, again, particularly if we make it clear that this is a permissive type of thing, I don't think it hurts anything.
Well, and would we want the same representatives every time, or?
No, it just means that this just gives some requirement for the county administrator to recognize that there should be a diverse representation. Wouldn't be the same individuals. Just somebody from the union, somebody from a department manager, that kind of
Now,
thing.
we're making changes as we go through.
Talking about them, yeah.
In a workshop, you can't make decisions, but
Nope.
we're making decisions in a very real sense as far as change this text or change that text.
Well, it'll be brought back.
It'll be
and
brought
whether
back to
those
the
changes
table.
are made is
My suggested change would be to remove
Yeah.
the salary evaluation committee.
So-
and we could, that would be my suggestion.
There is on file in the Commissioner's Journal rules about the salary evaluation committee and what the makeup is.
all right.
So that is
okay.
out there.
Maybe we should get.
So question, what was the impetus for even starting it? Just curious.
Well, when we did when LGPI came in and did a countywide salary study for us, and that was part of, so it wasn't just the LGPI guy coming in and saying, okay, this is this, this is this, and this. He had this team of employees that were part of the process. So everyone did their own, they filled out a data questionnaire on how much time they spend doing whatever, what their education is. So it was a real
So this was
comprehensive
their
study.
suggestion after doing that study?
Yeah, they said keep the committee intact, evaluation of it, send the information to LGPI, who would then place it in whatever salary range.
Okay.
So it was a way for placement out of the department heads or elected officials' hands. So it made it more equitable.
Of course, that was then 18 years ago when
Law enforcement, they chose not to participate in it.
anyway, that ultimately,
So how'd the study come out? Just curious.
Well, we had actually our lower, as far as aligning the positions, we were pretty good at that as far as where the existing positions were. As far as the market study, our lower end positions were actually paid higher than market, but our upper level were definitely lower. So
Okay.
what they did, what LGPI did was there were seven comparator counties that they used, and they were ones that were similar in size, and Coos County, since it was our neighbor to the north. So those were the ones that they did the market study to, because if they did just the proximity and they had Douglas County or Josephine County, I mean, they're all paid a lot more than we are. So we said, we can't even go there. So they changed to similar size and Coos County.
Okay. Were people really unhappy about their wages? Is that why the study was done? Or?
Well, I think a lot of it, like I said, you had department heads that they really like Susie Q, so they're going to put her in a salary range 8, but they don't really like Jenny,
Okay.
so we're going to put her in a 5.
A little
but they're
bit of
doing
nepotism
similar,
going on.
Yeah, so they're
Okay.
in similar and same positions. So that was the whole idea, was to get the
Make it more
internal
equitable.
alignment and then get a market study.
Okay.
Well, and there's always debates of, like, for example, how much should a appraiser be paid in the assessor's office compared to a senior assistant county clerk? You know,
Right.
those
Even been come together? I mean, 3 months, 6
Oh,
months,
no,
a year,
it's
2
been longer
years?
than that. Probably a year and a half to 2 years.
Okay. Oh, so. We'll
But we
move
don't
on,
have,
but my
we don't have as many jobs
recommendation
coming through either.
is.
Yeah, it's true.
Being
Yes,
paid.
yeah, that's true.
To remove it, you can always do something with it, but, and then we can look at the commissioner's journal and see what that says. Or county council, looks like he, would you do that for us, please, or
What would you like me to do again?
just to, Julie had mentioned that there's something in the commissioner's journal
Oh,
on the
thank
salary
you.
evaluation committee, just so we can see if, is there anything binding where, clearly, if it's saying we're supposed to do something and we don't, there's been no harm done, clearly. And I think it may say that, but so what you've been going through
Yeah,
with
no, right.
Administrator Hitt, you're going through these old orders that say
Right.
all these things,
Yep.
you haven't followed them for years.
Right,
Anyway,
right.
so what's the, what was the real value? You know, there may have been a value 15 years ago, but is there a value?
So what you're
today?
saying is we need to throw out what we're not using.
Well, I think that's certainly what's been occurring here
Okay.
with
Well, and
Administrator
yeah,
Hitt and many orders.
Well, that's true.
But maybe
As far as the
if
orders,
county
yes,
council
that's
could-
true.
What I'm doing through the magic of the internet is emailing my assistant right
You're
at
delegating.
this moment and asking her
Right
to
on.
find exactly what
Thank
you're
you.
asking.
Thank you. So if we go to, the 27 was an add-on with the definition of supervisor. Temporary position, is this again, Julie, something that is more defined or regulated, if you will, by collective bargaining agreement language or not?
Some of it is. Temporary employees, if they're less than 6 months, then we don't get into PERS. PERS is a minimum 6-month waiting period before you become a member. So if a person is less than 6 months, they don't fall in the subscription agreements for the Teamsters insurance, temporary employees, because they're less than 6 months.
So if it's somebody, regardless of whether they're a member of a collective bargaining, that threshold still applies? In other words, if somebody's working temporary for the office, the plan office, the surveyor's office, the whatever.
Well, but I think then you're looking at the collective bargaining agreements. I don't think they recognize temporary employees. This is just non-represented temporary employees. Those are going to be under one of the other collective bargaining agreements, if I'm understanding your question right.
And I haven't looked at our collective bargaining agreements for that. Usually, in my experience, they make a reference to temporary employees not being part of the bargaining unit. Do ours? Do you recall? Or
I don't recall.
Oh, you don't recall.
I'd have to
Okay.
look.
Anyway, in my experience, that would be a typical thing that would be encompassed with a temporary employee status.
But you
Temporary
mentioned
position status.
PERS, and that doesn't matter whether you're okay. On
We're getting there.
on 31, on page 13, did we have definition on the, yeah, we did. Okay, on an appointing authority.
Excuse me, I'll be back in just a minute.
I had a question here. Was there a versus the personnel officer or the administrator, but I have to go back to this one. Let's see, it's saying all voluntary demotions must be approved by the appointing authority, and that's where I was trying to see what was the appointing authority. Or what appointing authority up here says is, okay, a department head, elected officials, or the county administrator. So is that still, given that definition, is that still, does 31 on page 13?
Yeah, I think that's
worded
still
okay?
Yeah, except I might strike the words "and by the board." I don't know that.
Oh, is it still
And by
in
the
there?
board. Pardon me?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the only part about that is the board can still
Other than
go
the board
directly.
is, yeah, right.
They directly are
Right.
our appointing
Right,
authorities
right.
per the rules. So if you even need to say "and by the board,"
Yes, I think it's
they
just
are
redundant.
our appointing authority.
Yeah, I think it's just redundant.
I think this is the first time that it's been used that way that so far. So should we?
In most cases, for John Huddle and myself, it would be the
Correct.
board.
And
So-
again, I don't think, and the board hasn't come into any of these other definitions.
Right, and what would you really care if, you
No.
know, one of the road
No. So are
department
we okay
employees
just
took a
to-
demotion?
just to strike
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Okay.
Right. I mean, all it means is the
Okay.
pay goes down.
Okay.
I think we're done with the definitions.
Yes.
Just in time.
What we did on 31 on page 13, we just struck "and by the board," just left it as the appointing authority.
And that second to last sentence.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, then on Article 4 on page 14.
I also need to excuse myself back in a little bit.
To take a break because we've got our.
You're the chair.
You're the
Yes.
boss.
You're the
Let's
chair.
take a break,
What time
a
is it?
5-minute break.
What time is it?
It's for
Or do you need
2:45,
10,
almost.
John?
Two.
Almost 2:45.
You want to take, what, you want to go
Let's-
to what then?
Let's take a 5-minute break till 10 to.
Okay.
It'll give me a chance to stand up and
Okay,
wake up.
so
Such exciting
Great.
stuff.
How can you go to sleep on something this
2:57.
Okay, it's now 2:57, and I wish they could fix that clock to 12 hours instead of 24. We're going to.
Okay.
Are you on, do you have your microphone on, Madam Chair?
Oh, I guess so, yeah.
Probably couldn't have been heard. You couldn't be heard saying what you said, I think.
So we are resuming this meeting to finish talking or
Continue.
continue talking about the
I don't think we're gonna get through it all.
No.
the personnel rules. So we finished off with the definitions, and I think we need to come up with a game plan to streamline this whole thing, or
I would say to go a certain point, chair, today, and then set up another workshop.
okay,
To
well,
continue.
one of the problems we're going to run into is time, but probably better have it done right than.
I think there have been a lot of good changes made in the last hour and a half, is my opinion.
So, a question, would it be possible, because one of the problems that we were experiencing was having consistency throughout, would it be possible to go back and kind of look at it to make sure that we're consistent?
I would certainly believe that would be possible, and I'll probably rely on the two eagle eyes of Julie and John Huddle.
6 eagle eyes,
Mine aren't very eagle.
4 eyes. And
Oh, yeah,
2.
okay, yes, yes.
Oh,
Much
okay.
Counselor
further.
Huddle has 4, that's right,
how-
yes.
Well, I have
How much-
context.
But yes,
so-
I'm sure we
Where
can
do you
do
want
that.
to, do you want to go today?
That's
Okay,
your
how
call.
about, let's at least do Article 4, how's that?
Can, well, can
How
we
many
do more than
articles?
Article 4?
Well, how many articles do you want to do? Because we need to talk about the elevator also.
We do. And I apologize for that, but there's no choice.
I'll tell you what, let's talk about the elevator first, and then we'll go back to this. Because I can wake up a little more easily with the elevator than I can with this.
All right, just
We're back on it. Are you?
Yeah, that's okay. I just had a suggestion too when we get back to this, is on some other policies that we've looked at, we are doing kind of like subgroup work where where Tom Huxley, myself, and the administrator get together and talk over things, and then bring it back for public discussion. I'm wondering if that would also, Madam Chair, you seem to be concerned about the time we're taking up in meetings talking about some of this. I agree with Tom Huxley. We are doing very good work on these, and he himself has done excellent work here. So
he is a really detailed person.
I know.
I've noticed that.
And,
Would
you be willing to be part of a subcommittee to?
Just the only thing is, I personally am in favor of the entire board having a decent handle on these rules, because you do become involved at the most important times on administration of them, and they are a matter of our relation with our employees, and they create. There's just a lot to them that I think, for you to have a good working knowledge, to go through the whole thing from start to finish at least once for all the commissioners makes sense. But to do this fine detail work of them, maybe, again, we could parse it out, but that's just a thought. We can.
So what would be your suggestion to move forward?
You got Tom.
Well,
Commissioner Huxley,
we've spent, this morning we didn't touch this because I'm glad we revised it and got through all the other items.
Mm-hmm.
We've spent 1 hour and 30 minutes on this today.
That much?
Well, I say that's all based on, you got through the definitions, which is a big one. I'm sure there
that
will
seemed to be a
other
problem.
changes as we
Right.
do that, or additions. But that is going to make it easier for the future.
Okay, so what would your suggestion be?
Well,
that we
I'd
go
suggest
through
that we go
3 or 4 articles?
you go to address the
or
elevator.
let's do a time. Let's do the elevator and then go till.
And then say go till, it's 3 o'clock, go till 4 o'clock.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Consensus?
Julie?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, elevator.
Okay, so we're going to change here to the elevator.
Change gears.
And I know
change
that's not
floors.
on the agenda, but it's kind of an emergency that
Right,
we talk
yep,
about it,
yep.
so.
Do you want me to go ahead and proceed, Madam Chair?
Yes, would you please?
Okay, quick overview. You have before you an email chain, 2 pages on the upper left has my name, John Hitt, only because I printed it out. The first email, or the most recent email, is from Sheriff John Ward. I won't go over that. It's a relatively short email, other than his last paragraph, referring, of course, to the jail elevator, or the old city, or the old county courthouse elevator. It says this has to be addressed right away and a solution be given. We have no other options other than to cross our fingers and hope nothing happens. I'm not willing to do that, so I'm putting the BOC on notice that we have to fix this problem now. And he refers in the prior paragraph as to why the elevator is so important as far as moving prisoners for daily court appearances, etc., and other things that are moved and relocated by means of the elevator. Now, what are the options? The options are, if you turn that page over that has my name in the upper left corner and drop down to the second email down there, it says Olson Matt. He works for the Thyssen something.
Tyson Krupp.
Tyson Krupp. Arms of Krupp. Okay. I didn't notice the Krupp. Anyway, elevator company. I believe they're out of Medford. This office. At any rate, they came and the elevator was having problems. They came and looked at it, and this is their report, dated yesterday. And it says the second paragraph there. Talk about options. The first, the riskiest, the cheapest, the obsolete board. That's an electronic control board. Can be repaired. We would come to remove the board, send it to our factory. We'll come back and reinstall the board, then test the elevator safety functionality. This will be around, and I believe he means an additional $7,000 to $9,000. By the way, if you want a great career, get a job
Well,
as an elevator repairman at $300
the testing, I mean, it's insane what this.
No, I know,
place-
I know, I'm being
they're-
facetious.
yeah. Oh, no
Yeah.
facetious
Yeah.
about it, but when they have
Yeah.
to have it certified every
Yes,
so
I
often.
know they
and
do.
It's crazy.
So if the board cannot be repaired, then the elevator will not be able to run at all, and we'll have to discuss options 2 and 3. The elevator will be down for 1 to 2 weeks. So that option 1, which is just to replace the electronic control board, roughly $13,000 to $17,000. Second most expensive, I piece out a simple modernization, source out the parts, etc., replace the controller, replace the elevator. Once the elevator controller is replaced, elevator's been brought up to current code, plumbing, fire, etc., etc. I would recommend updating the power unit, pump, motor, and tank, and door operator 2. If we expedite this process, it will fall in the range of $75 to $95. I would work the budget, and that goes on to the next page there. It says, I would work the budget by others at 20-25% of the final quoted price. I should be able to have all the parts needed for the modernization 4 to 6 weeks with an additional install time of 2 to 3 weeks. The third, and this is being recommended by this Matt Olson, who works for ThyssenKrupp. Third, in my opinion, the best option, I would source out a modernization from my factory. We could replace the controller, power unit, door operator fixtures, and door safety edge. Lead time will be 8 to 12 weeks with an install time of 2 to 3 weeks. Price range will be between $65 and $80. If you wanted to add new elevator cabs, I would budget $15,000 to $20,000 for that. I would budget the work by others at 20 to 25%. So obviously option 2 and option 3 are both very expensive. Option 1, which is not expensive or not nearly so expensive, obviously has a certain amount of risk as to how long the new electronic control board could operate in light of what is brought out in one of these other emails that the elevator, oh yeah, it's at the end of this, what I was just reading from. It says, he concludes, Matt Olson, a good analogy to compare your elevator to would be your car. The elevator was installed in '85. What vehicles still on the roads have been running 7 days, 8 hours a day without a major repair. I can't think of any. Your elevator's past its lifespan. So.
Could I mention just one thing? I know the Port of Brookings in the Green Building has an elevator that never was installed. So I don't know whether that could be a fit and maybe buy that for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, now whether that would fit in our shaft.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know if
you
don't ask.
That's true.
I'm just putting that out there because
And
that was never installed.
I know a friend who, I can't think of
It's
any other
Brookings.
time I'd come up with the elevator name, but he
Otis?
was in Otis, and he's been all around. He goes now all around the world on just accidents and litigation and stuff. But again, it doesn't hurt to ask and see, but to look, is it viable to change to another brand?
You said it was at the Port of
Brookings Harbor, where they're having all the upheaval right now.
You have a couple of other options.
Yeah, okay.
To at least spend a few minutes to look at.
Yeah, I'm just throwing that out there because they may end up demolishing that building, and if they could get some, they're hurting for money. If they could get some money out of that elevator, I'm sure we could get it for pennies on the dollar, especially if it would fit our shaft.
That must have been sitting for
It's been sitting for a long time.
long time.
Okay. So, assuming that will not work, do you have any response to the good sheriff?
Oh, jeez. Is he going to be putting forth some of the money out of his budget?
I don't know about that one.
Well, that would be a reasonable question too. But I would talk to the finance and see what the availability is of some discretionary funds from the last budget. And I don't know if there are any because we've already gone over with collective bargaining agreements, which I addressed, some other things. But that would be the that's where I would go first to find out where, available funds.
Julie, would you mind going and getting Louise? Oh, okay. Never mind then. Don't get her. Okay. All right. I can certainly get. Do you know if she's back in the morning, tomorrow morning? Okay. I will get together first thing with her first thing in the morning and communicate with all of you. Okay. And also recommend that they contact Mr. Hanson and/or others. Contact the Port of Brookings.
Now, are we stuck with this particular person to do it?
Well, that's what you need to find out.
Yeah.
Because they've
he's
they've
for
had
that
a
particular
captive,
brand of elevator.
captive audience.
Yeah.
In these inspections.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. For that.
The only reason I ask, I came across a person, I can't remember who it was, that in their former life installed elevators and all of that. I'll have to try to remember.
Somebody in the business would know.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it once you're there, you're locked in for forever as long as you have the building? That may be the case, but
Yeah.
we can talk
we
to
can
the
find
people
out.
that will know that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't ask, you'll never know, but.
Right.
And I can call the fellow from Otis.
Oh, okay. Very good.
And he might know of someone who retired in this area that used to do that. Okay.
Or he could, he's still with Otis. He would be able to find out,
Mm-hmm.
what is the brand? What's the brand name?
Tyson Krupp.
Or is that in here?
Yeah, it's under from this Matt. Oh, you see Matt Olson. Mail to Matt Olson at TysonKrupp.com.
Could we get more information from the maintenance department, just for specifics as far as the make, model,
Oh, okay.
capacity?
Yep.
So we can give that
Even some dimensions.
to, well, at the make, model, capacity would answer those questions.
Yeah, but if you could find the dimensions of the shaft, maybe the port option might,
Yep.
be viable.
Okay. And the Tyson Krupp might have.
Well, that would show exactly what the requirements are
Yeah.
from the make, model, and specs.
Right.
Would show you what the elevator is, what
Right.
what shaft size, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, we can run that down for sure. Yep.
Okay.
I just hate to be held hostage
Oh, I know.
to
It's like,
one.
gosh.
Monopolies are
Yeah, it's
not
terrible.
good.
Sure, but I think once you switch another one, because of the initial investment, you'll be a new hostage at least.
Oh, yeah.
Different
Right,
captain.
you could go to
Oh,
Otis.
it's different
At
captain.
least it's new, maybe just sitting there for a long time, but new.
You go to Otis or Schindler or Tyson Krupp,
Isn't Otis a bigger manufacturer than most of?
Not sure.
That's the only one I've ever heard of, but that doesn't mean.
Once you do that, you're yeah,
Otis,
I'll
huh?
I'll call him.
Okay, and I'm pretty sure the one in the port is an Otis,
Okay.
but don't quote me on that.
But if you let me, no, just
Yes.
or-
I will try and find that out as soon as possible.
Okay.
Okay, Article 4. Let's get some enthusiasm in this, everybody.
I told you, I live for this.
On page 14, under D, Administration of Rules, again, it says the county administrator again, because of the county administrator is the personnel officer, was the wish to leave this as the county administrator or not? Because then further down on that same paragraph, we say this personnel officer shall assist the county administrator in administration of these rules.
Are they one and the same?
It's
Or?
the same. It's the same thing. So I think there's a lot of there's too much wording there, I think.
Oh, I see what you're
So it could be one or the other.
Okay.
So what's the?
Well, I think the benefit of leaving as it is, it kind of helps define the role of the personnel officer. I mean, I realize we have that in the definitions, but that she's an assistant to the county administrator, he or she's assistant or support. But anyway, I mean,
Isn't that
you
kind
go
of
either way.
implied that
Well,
since you're the administrator, you can
it is
delegate
implied.
your authority?
Yeah, it is implied.
So it's kind
So
of
do we want
redundant?
to say that if we say just one, do we want to say as you started with here, the county administrator shall be responsible?
Yeah, that's
And
good.
just, we okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay,
So just take out the second sentence.
and just take out the second sentence.
Less typing.
I'm a little, I don't really understand E. You were saying the Board of Commissioners shall exercise control over personnel through the adoption of the county budget, compensation package, orders, hiring of the county administrator. What was the purpose? That's an addition, I take it?
It
What
is.
was the purpose or the objective of that addition? What did it add to the?
I have a question about that. If we're looking at the part that says the county administrator,
In E?
well, I think it's E.
This is all in red text here.
Right.
Thank you. Actually, I'm looking at D,
Okay.
because if you look at D, this started out saying that the board is responsible for general administration of the personnel rules and shall be the final authority in their application interpretation. And then we say now the county administrator and shall be the authority. If you go up to the very beginning, I hate to make us go backwards, but I think it's important in this case. And again,
Just on the same page, or?
no, sir. I'm talking about the introduction. So
Okay.
that's found on page 4 of the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So the second paragraph, it says, the manual has been prepared by the board, legal counsel, and the management team, which I believe is the personnel officer.
Yep.
And then if you look at the last sentence, it says, while the day-to-day decision-making lies with the administrator, the Curry County Board of Commissioners is the ultimate responsibility to administer and maintain these policies. So, and again, it used to be that all personnel actions came to the board and hiring and firing and things like that. So I think we need to reconcile this second paragraph here at the end with the sentiment in the Article 4 that we're looking at there. And I agree, what we're trying to do here is get this to the point where the county administrator, is responsible for the general administration of the rules. That's certainly totally in line with having an administrator. And then the final authority in their application, or the authority in their application, the personnel officer shall assist, and administration and the Board of Commissioners shall exercise control over personnel through adoption of the budget, compensation packet, orders, hiring of the county administrator, and setting of policy. So the setting of policy, is that the revision and adoption of these rules? In other words, John Hitt, are we going to, to me it seems like the board would make the rules, because I think we have earlier also that changes to the rules can only be approved by the board. I think that's in Article 2 or Article 1 maybe. Article 1 says A2, right, that the rules can only be changed by written authorization of the Board of Commissioners. So I think what we're talking about is it's very similar to Congress makes the laws and the executive enforces the laws. So what we're trying to do is say, you all, the Board of Commissioners, will make these laws, and the county administrator will basically enforce them. So somehow if we can put that into words with respect to the introduction, and maybe it's, in that paragraph 2, and then this Article 4, there should be some explanation of that you know, what do you want to call it, separation of powers or whatever. But basically, you know, just the roles that are played by the administrator and the board. And I think, you know, adopting of the rules, because setting a policy, I'm not even sure what setting a policy means unless it means adopting the rules.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think saying, you know, adopting,
Yeah, make it as clear as possible.
adopting and updating the rules, and then that way it's clear, you know, the board adopts rules, personnel or the county administrator enforces them. And I think that helps me at least.
And I think that would help the employees too, as they're reading through this.
Yeah, for discipline and discharge, and that's where you talk about the process of going through that. So, but anyway, and honestly, I worked with John Hitt and Julie Swift doing this, and it's funny, you just see things differently the more you look at them. And I was always taught all good writing is rewriting. I don't want to, you know, over beat a dead horse type of thing, but certainly I think this is a point we're going over right now.
So do you want to make a change in the introduction or in Article 4?
I think we should change them both to reflect, again, board makes the rules, administrator enforces the rules. Kind of, John Hitt? Or?
John?
Well, I was just going to suggest under D, make it 4D on page 14 there, make it a little more consistent with the introduction by this proposal. The county administrator shall be responsible for the day-to-day administration of the personnel rules and shall have the authority to apply and interpret their meaning. And then that makes it clear that I'm going to apply it, I'm going to interpret the rules, but I don't make the rules.
Okay.
And then section E makes it clear, and we can change that setting a policy to, you know, establishing the personnel rules.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and revisions there too, or something.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
And that way, we're consistent with that other part in Article 1 that we talked about, the introduction. So we will make changes to that effect and try to work on it, unless there's any other questions on this application and administration part.
I understand that, you know, with perhaps a little wording change on the intro on paragraph 2. Okay. I'm just going to put minor change.
And then on E, the Board of Commissioners shall exercise control over personnel through adoption of the county budget, compensation orders, hiring the county administrator, and adoption of these rules.
I think, you know, yeah, what is it? Adoption of these rules or enactment or something.
You're talking about E?
Yeah.
How about orders hiring the county administrator and establishing and revising all personnel rules? Because when you were establishing it, you have the power to revise them.
What you're trying to say to revise that is that the board will have the ultimate authority there, or has
Right,
the ultimate
absolutely.
authority, and
Absolutely.
however you want to
Right.
word that.
Absolutely.
And on D, you're really essentially removing the last sentence
Yes.
and making a minor revision to the first sentence with the county administrator being
Right.
responsible for general administration.
Right.
Okay.
In other words, emphasizing what was in the introduction.
Yeah,
Mhm.
minor
Or the day-to-day administration.
Minor.
Yeah.
change, and that's out.
And so the interesting part is the difference between D and E is something we see every now and then. In other words, sometimes courts will interpret a statute to have a meaning, and other people who disagree with that interpretation will be saying they're actually creating new law. You know, so there could be times where the county administrator will make an interpretation, and someone may feel strongly enough that it's more than just an interpretation, that it's actually a new rule, and we could spill into Board of Commissioners there. But that's how
Yeah,
our
that's
government
just
works.
kinda- it
Yeah,
is.
and we are all branches of the government right here.
So
Right.
without getting
Yeah.
into agreeing on the specific language, we said minor change to the wording in paragraph 2, the last sentence
Of the intro.
on the info on page 4. Correct? And then if we go to page 14, on D, we remove the last sentence and a minor change to the wording on the first sentence, or the only other sentence, the first sentence under D, with the county administrator being the one that is responsible for the general administration. And then D, to pretty much maybe even, I don't know, do you have to get into the county budget, the compensation package, the orders? Does that really apply to the personnel?
Well, they're all
Annual?
factors. I mean,
Or would it mean the same? If you didn't have those words in there, you wouldn't know, and would it still have the same impact?
still the same impact.
To me,
But I think it's helpful, again, for somebody reading, if they're concerned, hey, I should be paid more. They're coming to me. I'm saying, look, your
Go to the
compensation
commissioners.
package, that was part of the budget adopted by the commissioners. I can't grant you a magical raise. So,
So you're saying the buck stops here?
yeah, and I think just for education, particularly with new employees, I think it's fine leaving it. I mean, in some ways it's redundant or stating the obvious, if you will, but
these two other changes were basically saying the administrator shall, and the subject matter being the general administration of the personnel rules. That's the subject. That the administrator shall be responsible for the general administration of those rules. In E, we're saying that the board shall ultimately be responsible for the rules, or approval and oversight of the rules, not for the budget, the compensation package, and
Well, I think what D and E are talking about is the relation between the county administrator
And the board.
and the employees, and then E is what's the relationship between the Board of Commissioners and employees. So the Board of Commissioners will stay out of employment matters, but nevertheless they're responsible for budgeting. In other words, how many employees is each people going to get? They're responsible for the compensation package that we earlier referred to. Or we're going to get to, that they adopt after recommendation by the county. So, and orders, yeah, that's general. And then also, they are putting the person in place who's going to run these rules, and they're going to ultimately adopt these rules as matters of county legislation. So it just kind of shows where the board will otherwise they're not really going to have an impact on personnel matters. So I think
so
that's
do
the
you want
idea
to
there.
change in E, because we're saying the Board of Commissioners shall exercise control over personnel. We've been talking about
Yeah.
personnel matters,
Yep. Yep.
personnel policy, and now we're saying, no, it's not the policy, it's the employees, correct?
I see what you're saying. So
you could.
I think actually it's the use of exercise control. I don't know that it's exercise control, but I think what it is the Board of Commissioners. So in other words, John
Over
Hitt
what?
will be responsible for administrative
Of
decisions on personnel
rules.
The board is responsible for personnel policy as reflected through your budget, your compensation package,
Then add
and
the
these
word
rules.
policy.
I think that's how we talk about this. Is that how you see it, John Hitt?
Yeah,
The
no,
difference between,
yeah.
and it's always the board is,
No, that's
you all
entirely
will be policymakers. So
Right.
I think that's a sentiment here. The
And
board.
maybe-
So
maybe-
instead of exercise control over personnel, basically, I think it's the board of. So basically,
Or
the county
policy.
administrator is doing administration of rules. Board of Commissioners are policymakers. So maybe it just says the board of.
Over
So I think
policy.
I think the idea of exercise control over personnel through the adoption of, I think really it would say the Board of Commissioners shall establish, overarching county personnel policies through the adoption of the budget, through the adoption
I
of
think
the
that's much
compensation
better
package,
wording.
through the adoption
to
of.
not make
yeah.
you lead to think, well, personnel.
Yeah, like
we've
you're
been talking
controlling
about
personnel through these.
policy.
I think
Okay.
I think personnel policy and
Yeah, that makes
exercise
sense.
control. I
Okay.
think really just
Okay.
establish overall policy
Okay.
through the following things, and I think those are the ways you would be influencing, personnel policy.
Okay.
And I think just the saying the exercise control over personnel was, just kind of an inartful way of talking about it. And again, this is what work sessions are for, and they're doing the hard work.
So
Really
the Board of
quick.
Commissioners shall establish overarching policy through the adoption of the county budget, compensation package, orders, hiring of the county administrator, and establishing and revising all personnel rules.
That sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
And then we'll take another look at it when it comes
Okay.
time to adopt and see if we need to make a tweak or not, but
Okay.
we'll see.
Okay, Article 5.
Okay. 4E. Okay. Let me go back to 4E. Okay. On Article 5, under 5A1, it says, a personnel file will be maintained by the personnel officer for each employee of the county. And then I'm going back to 4E and saying, who has access? So they're maintaining, who has access to that? If that personnel officer is maintaining it, just the personnel officer, or?
I think that was in the,
No, county administrator does.
Yeah, it's on
Right.
4A.
Because of definition.
No,
I
look at
remember
4.
reading that
Look at
somewhere. I don't
4.
remember where,
Look
but
at the next page, it's on the very
Yeah,
next
it's on page
It starts with
16.
employees may review their file during regular hours, and then you have A, B, C, D, and E.
it says entry of
And
material.
E under that, if you see, it says, Board of Commissioners, County Administrator, and Curry County shall have access to all personnel files. Now, I've had a question where one commissioner feels like that says a commissioner has, but what that means is the Board of Commissioners has to decide they want to look at a personnel file, and then usually that's done in executive session because they're treated as confidential unless there's something in there.
So would that commissioner have to be appointed
No.
by the other?
Thank you. If that were going to be the case, it would have to be delegated, the
Right,
Board of
you could appoint
Commissioners.
one
But
of
it would
you.
take a majority of
Yes.
the
Yes, take
the
two
board
votes.
to
So
do
an
that.
individual commissioner can't just go in and say, I want to see so-and-so's
No.
file right now.
No,
No.
and
It
individual
has to be
commissioners
a
are.
group
Yep,
decision.
yep. And
Okay, that's good.
because ultimately you have all the powers of the county, and
So
As a group.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just adding, as a group, but not as
Right,
individuals.
not as an
individuals,
individual.
You have no more power
I
than.
do have a
citizens.
question, if I could interject here. That is left over from when the Board of Commissioners were administering a lot of these personnel rules.
Right.
Is this something the Board of Commissioners even wants to delve into, at this time, to all personnel files? You certainly should have access to the employees who you have direct appointment authority over. But I'm trying to think of a context of when, now that we have a county administrator, what would be the purpose, the reason for personnel or for the Board of Commissioners wanting to see all personnel files? I think there could be, in other words, reasons for wanting to see perhaps the personnel files of the individuals that your designees or your appointees are overseeing, because you have to. No, you're not. I'm not talking about in the liaison context. But still, the board appoints John Hitt, John Huddle. I can't remember if there's anyone else. So certainly, it seems like the board collectively would have a good, solid reason for looking at our personnel files.
Right.
Then perhaps the board, because part of my job is to supervise someone, you'd want to see if I'm, how I'm doing that part of my job. You'd want to see how John Hitt is doing the part of his job that is supervising his the people he directly oversees. So I could see where you might want to go down to that level, but I'm trying to think of what
unfairly or whatever else, or gave her a bad performance valuation because of some personality conflict. They come to me with a complaint and I say, get out of my office, I don't want to hear this. Then their only recourse is to John Little or to you, and then I think you may want to go back and look at their personnel file to say, okay, what has been their history? What are the issues that Julie seems to have against them, and are they documented in their file?
All right. Well,
but I think it needs to be made very clear that the only way that a commissioner can get into the personnel files is if it's a group decision.
Absolutely.
Well, to me, that's
clear.
Clear as far as the Board of Commissioners.
Well, I suppose,
not a commissioner.
you know, I suppose I'm trying to figure something out, and we can cross that bridge when we come to it. So if there ever becomes a time where the board says, I'd like to see the personnel file of employee X, you know, then I suppose we could do that. Then we'd explore, you know, I'm trying to figure out in my mind right now, boy, what could be the possible reasons for having that in there for the board? Who knows? And I guess we'll know when
I think given some of the other checks here, that it would work.
Okay.
It would work itself out if it was legitimate.
I think so.
But I added here also onto that, I had added, again, to be more specific in this case, because it said the Board of Commissioners, comma, the personnel officer, not necessarily in this order, but the list of both the county administrator and the personnel officer and the county legal counsel.
Well, but it already has the personnel officer in
Up
D.
one?
Yeah.
On D?
Which?
D.
D specifically says.
Okay, I agree.
Okay. And then it says supervisors will have access to subordinate files, certainly.
Yep.
So that we've got three groups: supervisors, personnel officer, and then the larger, higher level people, or more general.
Okay.
Okay, good. Well, I was really just questioning if we were transitioning from Board of Commissioners and County Administrator, and we've changed it a number of times. Just checking, that's all. Okay. Thank you.
If we go to page 17, which is still on Article 5. On the top sentence, or part of the sentence, okay, let me carry it over from the prior. Okay, if the employee, that's carrying over from 16, refuses to sign, this is on a evaluation, refuses to sign, the material may be placed in the file provided a statement has been signed by quantity of 2 management representatives. Okay, what did we ever define what a management representative is? I think we got away from the word manager and went with department heads, correct?
Yeah, probably.
Now all of a sudden we have another term.
I think it makes sense to include the county administrator as one of the signers of that.
Yeah, I should know if there's an issue there.
So
sign their evaluation.
So
maybe put department head or and
in the
signed
past,
by,
administrative.
and we're going to remove 2 management representatives.
Okay,
in
Julie?
the past, it's usually the department head or whoever's issuing the document, and if I'm a witness to it, I will sign it also as the 2 management representatives. So it's usually whoever's issuing the document, and then whoever else would be a witness. So potentially the county administrator or whoever else.
But I
is
would say the
involved in
county
the process.
administrator needs to know what's going on.
Yes,
so.
I should know that,
So maybe spell it out. Just say the department head and county administrator there.
So 2 management representatives, 1 being issuer of document.
Or when we prepared the evaluation, document, I guess, better term.
Or the-
yeah.
Because it's not necessarily
That's
just
true,
an
not
evaluation.
necessarily
Evaluation could be a warrant or
Yeah,
whatever.
no, you're
Could be a
correct. You're
disciplinary
correct.
thing.
Can I ask a question about that? I mean, let's say, for instance, I'm the department head and I've got an axe to grind with a particular employee who I supervise, because we used to be romantic and we're not romantic anymore, and all of a sudden things are going bad. And I know there's all kinds of, you could say, oh, that's a whistleblower or something, but that person and the county administrator. So basically, the county administrator's checking their work. Would we want personnel officer and county administrator? I'm just wondering if we want to take the person issuing it out of the equation for kind of a checks and balances thing, but
if there's retribution or something going
Or
on?
have 3 instead of 2.
maybe so.
We could.
If they're making the claims, I think they should be
We could.
responsible
Yeah.
for signing and to acknowledge.
Sure,
that.
they would sign it. Okay. Well, okay. I don't know. And Julie, you said it's been you and the
If I'm there,
yeah.
if I'm there, I'm usually, and someone refuses, then we'll
Okay.
write on there, refuse to sign. and
Okay,
then
so
I'll
really
sign it.
your capacity was just as a witness. Were you ever like pulling the person aside and saying, hey, you might want to think about changing this to this? I mean, this word is never appropriate, or, I don't know, would you?
So you were just acknowledging that they refused to sign?
Okay, so it's just an acknowledgement process. It's not anything more than that. Okay, then I could see
Yeah.
where, then I think, right, then maybe John, not
Right,
you.
and I would
Julie.
always
I would just say Julie and the issuer and the personnel officer.
Well, and.
No, I think we should leave it with me.
Because it starts, except
Yeah.
as otherwise provided, no information or material reflecting critically
Right.
upon an employee
Yeah.
shall be
So-
placed in the employee's
Right.
personnel file.
So what this says is, if the employee sees this document and says, I'm not signing that, I don't agree with it at all, it can still be placed in that file with 2 signatures of management saying, acknowledging that the person refused to sign it.
So does the
Go in the file.
individual being accused of whatever have a chance to rebut that evaluation?
They can. If it's in,
So that could also be in the file?
Well, take a look on number 2.
right,
Okay. Oh, there we go.
right there. So, do we want more detailed information on who signs it, or just leave it as it is?
Well, I think it's good for me, the county administrator, because to be a required person. Because to get back to your question, John Huddle, if periodically that would happen, I would always do an inquiry. Okay, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones, why do you feel this rating is invalid or not fair? And then I would go back to the supervisor. Okay, here's their complaint. How do you respond to that?
Okay.
So I would do kind of a mini investigation
All right.
to see if we had a problem or not.
How about if you say, forget referencing a number, it shall be signed by the individual's immediate supervisor, the personnel officer, and the county administrator.
That's fine by me.
I think that would
Signed
be,
by.
it's not like this happens.
No, it's
So
not that
I'm going to call
often.
the issuer of the document.
That's fine.
Whatever it may be. Issuer of document. I can spell it. Personnel officer. And county administrator. Right?
Mhm.
Okay.
I think that's good.
Okay, anything else under this article?
On confidentiality rules, number 2. I guess, you can
Well-
debate the word reasonable until.
Do we even have an
the end
IT
of time.
department anymore?
It's outsourced, but.
Well, we do,
have
yeah.
Okay.
As so considered.
Definitely.
Yeah, even though it's
Okay.
independent contractor, yeah. I'm a little bit of
You just
agreement
remove
with.
the word reasonable. They maintain safeguards
Sure.
to
Yeah.
ensue.
So if you look at personal identifying information, I believe that's out of HIPAA, and we have identified our IT department as our HIPAA compliance officer, and this, I think, is addressing that.
Okay, this wording?
Yes.
The exact wording, do you know?
Well,
Or Julie,
I
you
can
know?
look, but personal identifying information is out of
Oh,
HIPAA.
I know that, yeah.
And I know we have identified our IT department and possibly our IT director as our HIPAA compliance officer. Is any of this ringing a bell, Julie, at all? And so I believe those words are kind of magic words from the HIPAA statute.
Reasonable safeguards.
So could we just
And how about,
confirm
Yes.
that? Okay, so we'll
Certainly.
and
just
how,
put confirm.
And
The wording?
these will come back, and I've also was noodling around looking into domestic partnership definitions as well. So there are things, John Hitt, Julie Swift, myself have been taking notes and things.
Okay.
So when this ultimately comes back to the board, we'll say, we had a work session on this day, and then maybe we'll say this other day and this other day, and these issues came up, and here's how they were addressed, page 6, page 7. So anyway, I think we'll try to get explanations of all these points in the staff report when these come back to you.
Okay.
and I would try to dump the word ensure if we can. I would prefer the word attempt to protect or attempt to safeguard.
As
think
much
that's
as
a
I can, I
reasonable
will,
I know, and
but
maybe
I
we
will.
can't. Maybe we're
Just
stuck
say,
with
but just,
ensure.
Right.
just confirm HIPAA wording.
Yeah.
Yeah, because any system can be hacked into,
Sure.
Well, that's why it also says
Reasonable.
reasonable safeguards.
Yeah, I know, but when you use the word ensure along with it, that's, anyway.
And that
We'll look
same
at it.
then would
We'll look
apply
at it.
to my
Yep.
circling the word reasonably on number 6 on page 18. And circling may result on 7, that still being probably pretty typical wording then? But,
Yeah.
violations of the county confidentiality policy may result in
How
this.
about
I think
should
that's-
result?
I think
No.
may.
You have to have may because we don't know the nature. It may have been totally inadvertent, or maybe even something that wasn't even.
May not.
If it was any kind of deliberate or conscious or gross negligent error, then I would say, yeah, they'd probably be terminated.
Okay.
So will or should or out?
Well, but I think
Well, in this
I think in
case,
this
yes.
case, because if
Yeah.
It depends, you're
Yeah,
right.
it depends
does
on the
depend.
situation.
Yeah.
Because there's
Okay.
different levels of disciplinary action, and then there's also just the counseling piece that's not really
Right.
considered discipline.
So will or should or out?
Well, but I think
Well, in this
I think in
case,
this
yes.
case, because if
Yeah.
It depends, you're
Yeah,
right.
it depends on
does
the
depend.
situation.
Yeah.
Because there's different levels of disciplinary action, and then there's also just the counseling piece that's not really
Right.
considered discipline.